Right, on to knight versus rook. I guess starting a new chapter. For all my millions of viewers who were worried that I'd given up on my project to go through the Dvoretsky in-game manual, don't panic. I definitely haven't given up on it. I just had a super busy March and April and just haven't had time to get on with it. But I'm determined to carry on with it, and here we go with knight versus rook, starting with just a knight versus just a rook. This is quite hard, in my view. This guy reckons knight versus rook's just a draw, easy, sort of nothing to worry about. All you've got to do, and it says here underneath me in the video, is be careful not to get your king and your knight too far apart from each other, and keep the knight out of the corner. And that's great if you don't start in the corner or close to the corner. But if you're sort of already there or thereabouts in what is objectively a drawn position, it's actually incredibly hard. And you'll see, I mean, I've got some master level games here, some puzzles, various positions, and I'm going to try a couple of positions against Stockfish. One of which I reckon I'm going to manage. I'll get the 50 moves in. The other one, I'm expecting to fail, and I don't mind if I fail it on this video, just to sort of see how hard it is, because I think it's hard. I think there's some bits where it's really just not clear what move you need to play next. Anyway, kick off with this position. We could pause the video if you want and guess the year that this puzzle or this game was composed or played, and you're going to have got it a long way out. Apparently this is a 9th century position. So there was a game that predates chess where the kings, the knights and the rooks all had exactly the same rules of how they move. So this is a 9th century position, and we can see that we've got a black knight in the corner on its, this is called the knight's dumb square, where it's sort of one away from the corner. It's just a really awkward place to have your knight in all sorts of different positions, especially when there's sort of pawns being chucked down the board at it as well. So it's called the knight's dumb square. And it's white to play here. It's a relatively simple puzzle. Apparently this puzzle was set back in the 9th century. What should white do? I mean, the engine's got lots of winning moves, but rook d1. I mean, already the king's controlling these two squares for the knight, and now the rook's controlling these two squares for the knight. So black cannot move his knight. So we'd see a king move, king b8, and then we come in and attack. Again, that wasn't the only winning move. King to c6 would have been alright. King b6, incredibly, would actually throw away the win. So we'll look at that in a bit, but not on this position, but in some other ones. So yeah, king a6, and now what does black do? They've only got one sensible square for their knight, which is there. If they didn't want that, if they sort of insisted on moving their king, they might try king c8. And it looks like sort of an easy mistake at first, because you go check, have to keep in defence of the knight. Pin the knight, you've won the knight. It's not quite as simple as that, because black's got stalemate tricks. But just as a first, and this bit's not difficult, just as a first rule of thumb, if you're at the point where your king and knight are in the corner and all you've got is a stalemate trick, you've had it, because white's not going to take that knight. But you're in the corner, you're in big trouble. So king b6. If the knight, will come up to knight d6 in a minute. If the king moves, then we've got pinned the knight again. Got to try the stalemate trick, and then king c7. So can't move the king to b8. And if instead we see knight d6, rook d1, knight's got to come back to b7 to stop the rook d8, which would be checkmate, and then king c7. So black's just had it in this position if they move their king to c8. So the knight's got to come away a little bit from the king. Knight c5 check, king b6. We've already seen something similar to this, knight b7, rook d7, and all the knight squares are now controlled by the king and the rook. So you might see king a8, rook h7, and it's just completely gone. So in this point here, black can't put their knight back, and they've got to come even further away from their king. and then we can go to c6, that's maximum distance from that a4 knight. And once the knight's been separated from the king, it really does just run out of squares, and you've got to be careful with how you sort of corner it with your king and your rook, but that knight is now going to get cornered. These two squares are controlled by the white king. This square is effectively controlled by the rook, like a rook b1 would pin it and win the knight next move. So the only square that black's got is the c3 square, which they'll probably want to use straight away, because if we see king c8, then rook d3 and we're covering the c3 square. And if the knight went to b2, then it's only got 4 squares out of there, and the rook on d4 would control all 4 of them, so the white king can just come back and win that knight. So yeah, knight c3, whilst it's still got a chance to go there, but rook e1, and it's just over. Yeah, the king and the rook are sort of slowly cornering that knight. So yeah, if the king and the knight get separated, the rook and the king corner it, and it's over. But it's not always straightforward. You have to be careful about how you do it, and this isn't what I would call the difficult bit. And there's no like rules to learn, or in this position you do this, and in this position you do this. You've just got to try and work it out over the board, covering the squares that the knight can go to. And if you think about the way the knights move, it's always hard to track a knight. Anyway, this position here is white to play. You can pause the video. White's massively winning this, and you can try and decide, what should white play as their next move. The first move I'd say is sort of fairly clear, but it's how you trap the knight after that, how you corner it. So if we play rook e3, attacking the knight's got to go to g1. It's the only square. c1's out of bounds because the rook picks it up with check, forks the king and the knight. So the knight's got to go to g1. You're thinking, well, how is this a puzzle? And that we're controlling all 3 of the squares that the knight could escape to already, and we've just got to come and win that knight with our king. But be careful how you do it. Zugzwang's actually very important in these positions. Be very, very careful how you approach that knight. And there's loads of winning moves here, but king f4 chucks away the win. Because black plays king d4, and what we want to play now is king g3. We want to play king g3. Of course we can't. We drop our rook, and we drop the win. We want this position with black to move. So the winning move here is king f5. By the way, this puzzle was also a 9th century puzzle. So in whatever this game was, I've forgotten the name of it. It's in the Dvoretsky endgame manual, Shatranj or something I think it's called. They'd already sussed Zugzwang as a concept and were sort of setting each other puzzles involving Zugzwang, which was rather good. Anyway, yeah, king f5, and now when black comes in, king d4, king f4. If the black knight moves, the white rook can take it wherever it goes, so it's got to be a king move, and then the king can come into g3. And when the black king comes to d4, then we can play rook e1. Because the thing about king f4 is that once we've moved the rook away, if we moved the rook away to e1 earlier, the h3 square was free. So let's actually just go back to that variation. So yeah, king f4, king d4, rook e1, knight h3, check. Incredibly, that knight is actually going to escape. We can come back to f4, and the engine even says knight f7 is fine here, but we can also come back to h3 with check. So yeah, this idea that if the knight gets away from the king and the rook are just going to round it up, it's not quite as simple as that. I mean, it looks like black's in trouble here. It looks like they really can't get their knight back to their king, but this is just a draw. I guess if we go here, maximum distance from the knight. I mean, incredibly, we don't have to get the knight out straight away. King d3 is also fine, but obviously we've got knight f2. And we're going to reconnect close to the king. I mean, sure, if the knight and the king aren't close to the edge of the board, I'd agree with Dvoretsky that it's fairly easy to draw. but when they're trapped right near the edge of the boards, it's not so easy. And we're going to see a gameplay between two grandmasters where there's just mistake after mistake, and it's not obvious why they're mistakes. I think it's hard, as we're about to see, and I think it's just one of those things you just need to practice. A bit like if you're going to run a half marathon, you might turn up and do a few stretches, and you might do a 1 kilometer warm up run or something. You know, like maybe when we play chess, we should be doing like queen versus rook against the computer, and defend knight versus rook, and then defend bishop versus rook, and defend rook versus rook and bishop, and all the rest of it. You know, just go through like drills just to sort of warm up. You might be thinking, is this knight versus rook something that's going to happen? Like, how often do the pawns all come off and it's just a knight versus a rook? And that is possible. We're going to see some games that clearly that's what happened. That's how it ended up. But a very common place that you're going to get it is rook versus pawn. And I'll just remind everyone of that. So if you go and watch all the rook versus pawn stuff that we did, I started the first 2 videos of that with like a mantra of like white to play as a win, black to play as a draw, white to play as a win, black to play as a draw, until I got to this position. And it's white to play is a draw, black to play is a draw. In contrast to this position, where it's white to play is still a win, and black to play is a draw. So it's all to do with if the rook's on the 5th rank, and what's that all about? So if black to play, then yeah, king e2 is a draw. I think pushing the d pawn's also a draw as well, but my advice was always to move the king, because if it's a rook's pawn, you definitely want to always move the king to b2. Anyway, I don't want to get sidetracked into rook versus pawn. Why is this a draw? Because if the rook was back on g8, it would come and deliver a check, and black's had it. But it's the rook being on the 5th rank. Okay, because we don't force the king in front of the pawn, the king comes back. And that's not a problem, because you just can come back to e8, d2, king f2, and when black queens, we pick up the queen. But we know where this is going. Okay, knight check, and then the rook versus the knight begins. I don't think that would be a difficult rook versus knight. The king's in the middle of the board, and the knight's going to join and not be too far away from it straight away. So that's how you'd get rook versus knight. That's probably the most common way of getting rook versus knight, and yeah, it probably would be quite easy to draw. But there's other ways of getting it as well. We'll see a game in a sec that got to a rook versus knight. What's the difference with a rook's pawn? Well, it's the fact that you want to keep your knight out of the corner. This is about to become a knight that's already in the corner, and so we'll just see straight away a demonstration of how the knight in the corner is bad news. Check. Here's the little trick. Come back, hit the rook. Off it goes. a2, king c2, a1 equals knight check, king c3. The knight's lost straight away. Okay, we want to play our knight to whatever the letter of the alphabet is before a3, and that square doesn't exist. So yeah, that's just a win. So those are 2. Well, that situation there. That'll be a very common way of getting knight versus rook. So what I'm going to do now is set up a knight versus rook. I'm going to play this position. This is white to move. I'm going to play this position against Stockfish, try and get the 50 moves, try and follow the principle of not getting my knight and king into the corner, and not letting my knight get too far away from the king. Then I'll look at 2 Masters level games, one of which is in the Book of Jesus, and where it's a lot harder, and some grandmasters have gone wrong, and their opponents have failed to punish them and gone wrong, and it's sort of flipped back and forth between now it's a win and now it's a draw, until eventually I think they both ended up in wins for the side with the rook. And then I'm going to have a go at one of those positions that the grandmasters failed to play perfectly, and I'm reasonably sure I'm going to mess it up. But I still think that works quite nicely as a video, because my conclusion is going to be this position's alright. I think, fingers crossed, that I'm going to get this one right. But once the king and the knight get a bit closer to the corner, it's hard. It's just hard. So yeah, let's play this one then. Right, so white to move. I don't think I've got much choice here really, but maybe king f1 was a choice, but I'll play knight f2 check, come back to d1. What I've found in my practice of these sorts of positions is that, yeah, I mean, you wouldn't get human beings doing this. So you're trying to get to the 50 move rule against a human. Your advantage of playing a human is they're not going to play it perfectly. Your advantage of playing computer is they're going to lose some of their 50 moves. Now, straight away, I have actually got a choice here between knight c3 and king f1. I think king f1 is okay. If the rook comes and pins the knight, I can come back to e1. If the rook goes off to h2, my king can come back to e1. Controlling this square is actually really useful. So I think king f1's okay. Don't think I've got a choice there. Yeah, that's literally the only move. What you often find with the defending side is that you have no choice. So you get to a point where if you're still playing it correctly, by process of elimination, you only have one move. So in a way that kind of makes defending it easier. Although if you've already messed up, then you've only got one move, and then you've only got one move, and then it's like, oh, I haven't got any moves. Now, I don't want the knight getting too far away from the king, so I want to try and bring it back to d1 if I can. And I think I can. Don't see anything wrong with that. Stockfish taking a long time. There you go. So that's just a repeat. Thank you very much. That's quite nice. I don't see a problem with that. I think we just had this position a minute ago, didn't we? When the rook was on b2 or something. Can't remember. But I think that's just fine. I think we've already had this position. Now what? I don't want to move the knight, I don't think. Because if I moved it to c3, the rook's already controlling those two squares, the king's controlling that one, and the rook's controlling that one. My knight's already getting away from my king. And that's the only knight move that doesn't lose the knight straight away. So given that knight c3 I'm pretty sure is wrong, I'm going to play king e1. And if I've gone wrong, well, we've had this position already, so I must have done it okay. That move, again, I haven't got a choice. Oh, I did have a choice there, actually. Could have gone knight b2. There's, oh yeah, I think if we shifted the entire board this way, I think that knight c3 I just played was a blunder. It would have been knight d3. I think it's a blunder, but incredibly knight c2 would have been okay. I'll get on to that. And that's all to do with the fact that the only reason I got away with it is I've got this extra file over here, which I wouldn't have had if the whole board was shifted, all the pieces were shifted that way. So I think I can get away with knight back to d1 check, and if king d2 I come knight to f2. Okay. This is where, yeah, so this move, if this file didn't exist, black's won. I'm reasonably sure that this move's okay. And I'm sure that this move's okay as well. I reckon knight h3 is fine. Let's make use of the h3 square, which wouldn't exist if all the pieces had been shifted one to the right. Right, now what? King back to e3. And I suppose king e1 looks like it loses immediately to rook g3. And I have no other sensible move, so it's got to be knight g1. I only have one move. I only have one move. I guess if you're playing this as a human, you want to give your opponent the chance to go wrong, assuming that I haven't already gone wrong. Right, I'm thinking of knight g1. If the rook goes that way, I go king f1. If the rook goes the other way, can I go king f1? I think my knight's good on g1, controlling the f3 square. I've got up to move 19 so far. Uh-oh. Oh, I think that's bad news. Might have just messed this up. Maybe not. Maybe I got lucky. Hadn't messed it up. H3 or E2. Where's it going to go? Well, we can't get Rook G3. We'll have Rook G4. Can I play King F1? Yeah. I think this is okay. I'm not certain though. This stuff's hard. It really is hard. I mean, I think there will be a bit of... I've had that position already. I think there will be a bit of luck in here if I manage to get to the 50 moves. I'm halfway. But I'm obviously doing something right here. So anything with the rook on the f-file, I can mess about, it looks like, with knight back and forth from h3 to g1. So this is the kind of thing a human being wouldn't do. They wouldn't just keep moving their rook on the f-file. Because I don't think there's anything that any of these ranks offers. You know, now we're on the 8th rank, and it's almost like, you know, what's it doing? All knight moves there are silly, so king f1 is the only move. All knight moves there are silly, so king e1 is the only move. Ditto. Uh-oh, that's different. Well, I haven't got any choice. Only move. Here I've got a choice, but knight g5 doesn't look a very clever choice. Where my knight and king are going to get separated, so I'm going to come back to g1. I mean, if I am getting this right, I'm 35 moves in. What I would say is the principle of not letting your knight get away from your king. I'm following that. So if I get to 50 moves, then great. I've done so following a rule. It's always nice to have rules to follow, isn't it? But I'm not convinced by any of this. I think it's just hard. No, it's looking like it's going to be good. Now we're back to the rook on the f-file where it was this business. Yeah, so I don't think the computer's been particularly imaginative in the things that it's tried. Is that any different to... Well, I don't think I've got any choice there, haven't I? I've got to play king f1. Oh, something slightly different. One other thing that ends up happening with these, and I'm sure this would happen loads against a human opponent, is that I've been sort of doing everything here where I'm sort of, that's the back rank, or the first rank I'm being forced onto. You know, how's our ability to translate those moves symmetrically? When it comes to things like queen and king checkmates, we can do the symmetry like that. I think we just all can. When it's like a knight and a bishop checkmate, the symmetry is not so easy. And when you're defending knight versus rook, I think the symmetry is not so easy. Though I'm pretty sure that's the position we just had, so I'll come back to f1. So king e1 is a choice here, isn't it? Is it a bad choice? Is there anything that... King e1, rook d2, king back to f1, I think it's okay. I have one more move to play. I've done it. There you go. So that's 50 moves without progress. Draw. I very much doubt anyone watching this is thinking, well, that was very convincing. But, you know, I did it. And all I did really there was follow the principle of not getting the knight too far away from the king. A lot of the moves were just only moves, and I was just thinking, well, if I go there, then rook there looks pretty bad. So, you know, a choice of 2 moves, but one of them just looked bad. So, you know, in a way, you sort of, it's sort of easy by process of elimination. But we'll see on the more difficult position that I'm going to try and probably fail at, how this easy by process of elimination goes. Okay, so this is a 2006 game now, and this is the one that's in this book. So this was a game played in 2006 between 2 grandmasters, very strong grandmasters, and I'll go through how it went, the mistakes that supposedly happened at various stages, what we should have done instead, and I can't remember whether this is this the position I'm going to have a go. No, this is the position I'm going to have a go at. So I'll go through that's a 2009 game. So I'll go through this 2006 game first of all. So yeah, white's in check. King g3 was played. Knight went to d3. Rook d2. Knight back to e1. There's nothing wrong with any of these moves. Pretty similar to the sort of stuff you just saw a minute ago when I was playing against Stockfish. But notice the king is a bit more in the corner. So it is the position I talked about where everything just sort of shoved one file off to the right. Now, this is the bit that I actually talked about. So in that previous position, I played what was knight from d1 to c3 and said how that would have been a blunder in this position. So I'm going to go through how that is a blunder in this position. In the game, black played knight g2, which is correct. It doesn't look clever to sort of voluntarily move the knight to its dumb square, 1 square away from the corner. But that is one of the 2 correct moves. The other one, if you're in doubt, is knight to c2. Okay, but what you can't play here, and it's very hard to understand why, is knight d3. Okay, so see if you can have a go at following this. I'm still not 100% convinced that I do. White plays king f3. Knight comes back to e1, and then the king attacks on e2. Okay, knight to g2. We had this in the game against Stockfish, and Stockfish did play that move effectively. Okay, and now I played what would in this position would be knight to i3. The I file doesn't exist, so we can't play knight to i3. I don't want to go into the details, but it turns out that if we had an I file, this move would also be okay, and it's to do with when the king might step this way later, it's not on the back rank. Okay, so there isn't an I3 square. The knight has to go to f4 anyway, and this position's now lost. But if you think from where we came from, so the knight went to d3, king here, king chased it, rook h8, knight f4 check, and it's like we're going around in circles. The king comes back to f3, knight to d3. Now the white rook comes down to h5, just sort of guarding this square. And then it's like we're going around again. Black can play knight e1 check, king back to e2, and then knight g2. So it's like we've gone around in circles. How are we getting any closer here? And this time, a move that white didn't have the previous time, because the previous time the knight went to g2 was here, when the rook was on f8, and white played rook h8. Okay, this time round, when the knight's on g2, the white rook's on h5, and it can go to e5. Right. What's so good about this? There are 2 squares on offer for the black knight. Let's see what happens. So if knight to h4, rook e4, we don't want the knight away from the king, so back to g2. Pin the knight, king has to move, king f2, it's gone. Okay, but what about knight f4 check again? We're going around in circles again. King f3, knight comes to d3 again. This is the 3rd time we've gone round on this route, this time attacking the rook. But the rook's on e5 this time and goes to e3. Okay. This square's out of bounds because of rook e1 check, and then the king will pick off the knight. These 2 squares are controlled by the knight. This one's controlled by the king. This one's sort of controlled by the king. And they're not immediately taking it, but after rook e1 check would take it. And that's it. The black knight has to head this way, and you're going to see a sort of a rounding up like we did in that opening position. So the knight can't do that round in circles again. What if black ignores it? And if there was an I-file, this would work. Okay, if there was an I-file, king h2 would be fine. King f3, knight to h4, check, and king f2. And it's because this is the back rank that black's in trouble. So all of this means that back here, black can't play knight d3. They can play knight c2. Okay, and the difference there is, because if white goes king f3, this would blunder by transposing into the same position. The difference is that this time you can follow the white king. You couldn't do that with the knight on d3 because this discovered check would pick up the knight. Everyone clear on all of that? Now, of course, whoever was playing black, I'm pretty sure didn't see all of that, and just from the moves that follow, it's clear that they were just sort of doing their best at the time. They played knight g2, which looks counterintuitive, but is the correct move, or one of the two correct moves. Knight c2 was also fine, as discussed. King f3, and now white blunders, black blunders. I mean, just to show you how hard this is, pause the video if you like and guess what black needs to play here. It just seems like such the wrong move when you consider the principles that we're talking about. There's only one move here that draws the game, and incredibly, it's knight h4 check. And when the king moves, king to g2, or if when the king moves to e3, knight g2 check would actually now throw away the game. That's just transposed, I believe, into something incredibly similar to what we've already seen. So yeah, king g2, rook g8 check, king h3, and I guess we've just sort of achieved the same position, but this is the new back rank. So king f2, king h2, and that is the same. I think that's pretty much the same as the opening position that we saw, but rotational symmetry reflection symmetry on that diagonal. So yeah, black didn't find, we're talking about a grandmaster, but unsurprising that they didn't find knight h4. Check, king f1, the game's gone, but the player with the white pieces failed to find the winning move. Okay, there's two winning moves here, and king g3 check is not one of them. King went back to g1, and they tried again. Okay, this time, the player with the white pieces found one of the two winning moves. What you want to do as white is keep your rook on the f-file and keep your king on f3. Okay. f4 and f5 are clearly very stupid places to put your rook. So either rook f7 or rook f6. It's a whim. It's like a zugzwang going on. So rook f7, 91 check. What's the problem? King sidesteps to e3 with check. King comes back to g1, and then we're back in that position again. King e2, knight to g2, and now rook h7. And we're going to do that sort of round in circles thing, where weirdly white's not going round in circles. They are slowly rounding up the black knight. Okay, so knight f4 check, king f3, knight d3. This is where the best move is rook h5, and we'd see check, king e2, knight g2, and then rook e5 this time round. We've already seen this position. In the game, the player with the white pieces played rook h4, which is still fine, it's still winning. Knight e5, check was played, and king e2 now throws away the win. Can you believe it? King e2 throws away the win. The reason for it is that king e3 should be played, and it's all to do with ultimately guarding the g5 square, and on e2 it's too far away from g5. So now when black plays king g2, you come and attack the knight. d7 is the square that the black knight is apparently meant to go to, and the winning move here, well, there's other winning moves because your king's a bit closer, but king f4, and yeah, we're closer with the king, so it's going to be harder for for the black knight to get back to the king. Whereas on e2, which is what was played in the game, the black knight can get back to its king now. Okay, so king g2 is fine. Rook e4 is fine. Black now goes wrong with knight f7, obviously. I mean, this stuff's hard. I can't believe that Dvoretsky goes, oh yeah, it's just relatively easy to draw a knight versus rook, but you need to just be a little bit careful. It's hard. It really is hard. You've got to move your knight, and you want to get it back to your king somehow. It's like, oh well, knight d7. That's what you need to play here. And yeah, I guess the idea is there's just all these different squares that it can use, and the black king's coming back up here, and the king and the knight are going to find each other again. I'm not going to pretend that I've gone into the details of it, because it's just got to the point where it's just too hard, in my view. You know, the knight's got away from the king, bad luck. There might be sort of a miraculous route back. It turns out to be d7, not f7. Fine. Knight to f7, rook to e7, knight to d6, and I think it's all fairly easy from here. I mean, it looks like, yeah, I mean, knight to g5, we're going to win the knight straight away. Knight h6, we see check and then win the knight. That's not particularly difficult to see. So all these squares are out of bounds. h8 is clearly ridiculous as well, because g7 and e7 check with the rook. So it's either d8 or d6. It went to d6. Check. King h3. Come in threatening checkmate. King's got to move. Come in threatening checkmate again. King's got to move. Rook to e7. And now just look at the squares. These are controlled by the king. These are controlled by the rook. That knight's getting rounded up. It tried to escape this way. e6. Just keep controlling the squares. Okay, tries to escape over here. d2. White played rook c6. So each move as white, if you're the side with the rook and the king, you've got to think about, right, where's the knight going to go? Because you're sort of allowing it to f1 here, and is there a route back to the king? So the player with the white pieces, when they played rook c6, has obviously calculated that it's okay to let the knight to f1, where rook c2. These are controlled by the rook. These are controlled by the king. The knight's gone. Okay, so black worked that out as well and put their knight on b3, and just slowly but surely, rook, king, the knights had it, and it just got sort of more and more. I don't know if this is the most efficient roundup, but it looks pretty good. And oh yeah, now we've got a pin on the f file, haven't we? So yeah, that's where black resigned. So that all started from this original position. It was very, very hard for black to defend that. It was objectively drawn. They didn't manage it, but then white didn't punish them. White gave them second chances, and they still didn't manage it. And I just think it was hard. Here's a game from 2009. So this is in the Book of Jesus workbook, and the question it comes with is like, can black save the game? You know, what should black play next to save the game, basically? Well, it says, can black save the game? If the answer is just no, it's a bit disappointing, isn't it? So the answer is yes, black can save the game, but they need to play king b3. And when this check comes in, there's only one drawing move here, which is king a3. I guess you've got to keep in contact with the b2 square for the knight. If instead white had played the move that they played in the game against king a3, which was rook f3, then we'd see a check. And something that's quite crucial here is that this king can't come to c3 because the black king's covering it. So I guess it's sort of the original position. Black's refusing to voluntarily go to this back rank unless the white rook comes over here, which is where white doesn't want their rook. It's kind of quite nice, threatening discoveries behind their own king. So yeah, in the game, king a3 was played, rook a7 check, threw away, that was what happened in the game, and yeah, that threw away the win again. So what white should have played to win this game is rook f3. Okay. Let's look at a couple of moves here. So if black moves the knight, knight b2 check, king c3, knight a4 check, king c4. I think we've already seen this position, haven't we? In the we've seen this position already in that last game, but we saw it over here, you know, with the king had to go to there with our knight stuck on e1. So it's the same position, but I've lost track of what kind of symmetry that is, but it is the same position. King b4, and then yeah, we're back to the round in circles thing, rook f1. Okay, so we've exactly the same position. We're going to see all this business coming around in circles, but the crucial bit is the second time round, the white rook's going to be in the correct place. So coming back here, knight b2 check's no good. What if black decides to move the king? Well, we've got rook f1, check, king c3, check, king to b4, knight b2, and we've just got to keep the rook on the h file to transpose. Let's just see all the going around in circles again. Sorry, let's not see the going around in circles again. That would be the going around in circles again. But yeah, if the black knight comes over here, I guess a different variation. It's just too far away from its king now. Rook d1, that's controlled the d5 square. Knight to e6, that's controlled not that square. That's controlled a lot of these squares, isn't it? So it can come to f4. Yeah, so that's controlled by the king, that's controlled by the rook, that's controlled by the rook, that one and that one's controlled by the rook. The knight's running out of squares. Where's it going next? So move the king, check, back to a2. Oh, okay, here it's trying to line up a fork in the knight and checkmate, which looks like it kind of works there. That's got to be a check now. We're running out of squares for that knight. And finally, fork in the knight and checkmate. Anyway, yeah, so that's what white should have done. White should have played rook f3. Did they not see all of that? The fool. So instead in the game, rook a7 check was played. It's now back to a draw. King b3, rook b7 check, king a3. It's still on a draw. I'll keep going through all the moves until we get to the point that one of them messed it up. So yeah, at the moment it's still a drawn position. Incredibly hard. King a3. Now white tried this king d3 move over here, and black went wrong. Okay, king a2, which seems like just the last move, the move from last time. That's actually thrown away the draw, and now white should play king c4, and it's a win for white. So what black had to do in this position was play knight b2 check, king d4, knight back to a4, and the white king's just sort of zigzagging its way in. Sorry, it's not. The white king's not zigzagging its way in, because it's just, this is how black should have tried to draw it. Losing track of which position to draw and which position to win here. So yeah, back to the game. King a2, and yeah, now it's a win. But I don't think the drama's ended there. Knight b2 check, king c3, knight a4 check. Oh, that's right. This is the bit where the white king has zigzagged its way in. Knight b2. Rook d5, this is all good, king b1, and now white throws away the win. There's only one winning move for white here, and it's not obvious what it is. It's sort of a zugzwang, leaving the b file free thing combination, I suspect. But king a3 is the only winning move. And the main point of king a3 as opposed to king b3, which is what was played in the game, is that black can't shift the king to c1, because we'd see rook c5 check, king b1, rook b5. Yeah, okay, black's got the stalemate tricks going on, but we've already established that just doesn't achieve anything. White would just play king b3 and then king c3, and yeah, we've seen that that's not actually hard to deal with. But that's if black plays the king, and if instead they tried to move their knight, then it's going to start getting away from the king again. So knight c4 check, king b3, knight back to b2, rook d2, and it's gone. So it's all to do with the move order, and I guess the main thing was leaving that b file free for the pin. In the game, white played king b3, which has now chucked away the win. King c1, check, back to b1, rook c3, knight d1. A lot of this looks very similar to what we had a minute ago in that game I played against Stockfish. That's the knight f2 move I talked about. Yeah, so this is the same situation. That's a draw, and that loses. That would be the same as the knight d3 in that other position from the 2006 game that I went through. So yeah, this is all fine. Rook back to f8. These moves are all good. A lot of these moves are just forced for black, but in a minute they go wrong again. And it's the same trick that white used. The king step backwards, and here's where you have to play knight b2 check. But instead they blundered with king b1. This time, white didn't let them off the hook. So it was king d3, knight b2 check, king c3. I suppose that time there was no way to let them off the hook because they couldn't have got to b3 that time round. So they couldn't have made the same mistake again. Knight d1 check, king d2, and I think we're back to the round in circles. No, we're not round in circles again actually, because the white rook can't come to the a file straight away. But it could have gone to e4 actually, which is ultimately where it wants to end up. Yeah, the engine's got that as the best move. There's nothing wrong with rook e8. It does eventually get there. King c3. Yeah, there's definitely elements of white didn't really know what they were doing. But, you know, not being precise. Yeah, and then the black knight sort of started to drift away from its king. And yeah, I don't think we need to see much more of this now. There was nothing else interesting to say. The knight runs out of squares very, very slowly. Surely rook f7 finishes that off, yeah. King b3, rook c7. Okay, so I mean, I think that was just incredibly hard for the player with the black pieces. I'm now going to have a go at this position against Stockfish. We'll see how many moves I get into the 50. I'm not expecting anything much, to be honest. And I think we'll call it a day there. That hopefully we've seen enough. Hope people are finding that useful. That keep your knight close to your king. Be careful in the corner. We saw how hard it was in those two Grandmaster games. Let's just stop me waffling and get on with trying that other position against Stockfish. Right then, here we go. So this was the original position, and it's can black save the game? And we know the answer is yes, but they have to play king b3. If we get checked there, I remember, as I'm just playing from memory at the moment, that I'm trying to keep in touch with the b2 square. That was the only drawing move. Okay. So we're having our knight attacked. There's only two moves that make any sense at all. This one looks a lot further away from the king. So surely it's that. If this is drawn, surely it's that. Now, isn't that where the white king just came from? So there can't be anything wrong with that. Just going back. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. What about a check in there? Covering that square, which is useful. There's nowhere to move the knight, so that's the only move. What's that, king a2? Oh dear, this isn't looking good. I can't think how I've gone wrong so far. I really can't. But that was the only move, wasn't it? That's surely sensible. Coming back there. Now this is the bit where that loses. I think. Is it that loses? Yeah, that loses to king here. Whereas I think this is okay. Right, we've had that position already, haven't we? So that's okay, isn't it? Knight back to a4. I'm going to do this again. Oh dear. Oh no, hang on. This is the one where that's the difference is that I can now follow it in with the king. Because if the knight was here, king a3 would lose to king c4, discover check, picking up the knight. So I think this is now the time where I can follow that white king in. What have we got going on here? Now, is this the bit where white's lost a move with the rook? So was this in the game where they played their knight check? The king got out of the way. And it was lost all of a sudden. Yeah, if I go knight here check, king c4 check, king a2, king b4, the knight has to come to b2, and then we're into that going around in circles where we know the knight's lost. So knight d1 check definitely loses. I don't like moving the king away from the knight. I'm going here. Now what? Right, well, king. There's only one king move, and it's very. Is it very silly? Ooh, I wonder. So king a3. If we see a check. King a3, I'm looking at rook a5 check, knight a4 check is forced, king c4, my knight is pinned to my king and my king can't move, can't stay in defense of the knight, so king a3 definitely loses. Oh dear. Where on earth are we going to put the knight? d7? It's not looking good, is it? This is so hard. This is so hard. I'm not sure how it's gone wrong already. I think it probably has, but I'm going knight d7. Right, so that king's coming after my knight now. Now what? Now what? I know it's crazy, but I'm looking at knight b8. My thinking here is that we can get back over this way. And we've got knight b6 check, but king c5. I'm struggling to see where the knight goes next. That looks... Ooh, are we allowed to follow it? Or is that the check? Defend the knight. Everything's okay. Oh, let's try it. Maybe everything isn't okay. Hang on. That's the... Ah, but this time it's different. If I go knight here, check, king there, the following it in's not a problem because this isn't the back rank. So I think this move's okay. good that I did this at the end of the video, as I'm sure some of you have sensibly got bored of watching this a long time ago. Although, I don't know who I just said that to, if that's the case. Right, what have I got here? I want to play king there, but obviously I can't because the knight's then lost. I feel like this has gone well. So I'm thinking a king there. I'm just getting a bit in the corner here though, aren't I? What about knight there? Where does the rook go after that? Oh, knight here. Is that okay? Is that a move? Uh-oh. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I messed this up now. Where's that knight going? Got knight c8, rook d7 check. Oh, I'm covering the... Is that any different to where we started? Not sure. Oh, I can also go rook d7 check. I can go king this way. I probably should. So that I don't... That move doesn't look great. This move looks alright. There you go, I'm halfway there. That's move 20. This is my 26th move. Let's get king back there. Oh, I think I've done something right. Yeah, uh-oh. What's that done? Knight here. So I'm sort of in the corner again. But... Oh, is this the bit where it's gone wrong? King back here? Oh dear. Well, I've only got one move there. Although I think this is just fine, isn't it? Aren't we back to the... I've got king and knight on the edge. Oh, he's got rook there. I should have gone the other way. Ah, I bet you I should have gone the other way there. Because he couldn't... Because that was a zugzwang the other way. Oh, how annoying. I think I messed that up. I'm reasonably sure that was a losing move and I should have gone knight the other way. So we'd have the same position, more or less. But with white to move. Now I've got to go over here. Oh no, maybe it's still okay. Oh, hang on a minute. Isn't this the same sort of thing as when I was doing that knight h3 g1 business earlier on? And it was, I forget which colour it was, but they just stayed on the F file. My king was on E1. I think it's the same thing. I'm starting to pick up confidence again that famous last words that this is okay. And this is oh, hang on, that's a check. That's not a check. This is the bit where if this was the back rank, then this would definitely be a losing move. But it's not the back rank because I'm playing it. If it goes king to b, yeah, okay, so I'm doing this again. Oh, that was my 38th move. That's my 39th move. Oh, hang on, that's the trick that isn't that the trick that that guy did in the game? Move the king back. And what was the mistake he made there? I can't remember. Well, shall we come off the back rank? Fascinating stuff, this video, isn't it? Watching somebody doesn't quite know how to play chess, attempt to play chess. But this stuff is hard, isn't it? This really is. This stuff is. Can I go over this way? I think I can go over this way. Maybe go here, you know. Because if I get checked on b7, I can come out to c3. Yeah. Okay. Can I go to c3 anyway? Rook g3 check, king b4. That's fine. Uh-oh. Maybe that was a mistake. Okay, I'll go knight there. Oh, this is going really well now because I can go opposite the king. If a rook check, I can block it. I've only got 5 moves left to go now. This is definitely drawn now, but doesn't stop me messing it up in the next, 6 moves. This is my 45th move. That check there, surely all right. Just pretend it's, oh wow, this is just done now. Right, well, this is a miracle. I managed this. Two more moves to play. I can do that and that. Yes, 50 moves without progress. Anyway, so that's rook versus knight. Don't get stuck in the corner. Try and avoid your knight and your king being too far separated. And I guess just practice it, just like I've done. So I'm not lying, that position I just did, that is the first time I've managed to do it without losing that initial position that those grandmasters have found so hard. I was just messing it up within 10 moves. The furthest I got was like 25 moves. And you saw that I thought that I'd messed that up, but somehow I hadn't. So I think this stuff's just really, really hard. I disagree that it's just easy to draw. I guess just sort of do your best and that process of elimination thing that I talked about. Anyway, hope people find that useful as a starter to knight versus rook.